Yes, hello, you're watching the Sunday Politics for Yorkshire and Lincolnshire coming up today.
We are the Rocky Balboa of politics. Every time we get knocked down and it looks like we're never going to get back up again, we get back up.
What's next for UKIP after a turbulent few weeks? Just how many times can they get back up again? How bright is the future for our booming tourism industry? Could Brexit rub off some of the shine? And like her new constituents, we'll be meeting the new MP for Batley and Spen. Yes, Tracey Brabbin will be joining us later on. Before then, we'll be chatting to Rishi Sunak, Conservative MP for Richmond in North Yorkshire, and Godfrey Bloom, former UKIP MEP for Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire. Hello to you both. Well, while the politicians debate the pros and cons of Brexit at Westminster, industries that traditionally rely on migrant labour say they're feeling the impact of the uncertainty. Not only farming, but tourism too. Now, that's an industry worth more than £8 billion to Yorkshire and Lincolnshire's economy. And despite a bumper summer with increasing visitor numbers, many businesses say they're concerned for the future and how they'll be able to recruit staff once we leave the EU. As Sarah Irwin reports.
Welcome to sunny Scarborough, where tourists have been a part of the local economy since the 17th century. This summer, with the low exchange rate, many hotels, businesses and other attractions have experienced record visitor numbers. So let's go and meet one of them.
Brexit and the drop in the pound has absolutely helped the whole economy in Britain. Scarborough's booming. I think together with people have a bit of fear now of travelling as well. We've been here 10 years and we have very few people from abroad, and we've had a lot of Europeans this year, so they've probably been making the most of the weak pound, and the euro being worth more.
This July saw its highest ever number of overseas visitors to Britain. Tourism is big business in our region. It's worth more than £8 billion across Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. And Kerry isn't the only one experiencing a bit of a boom.
The Americans are particularly interested in Magna Carta and all the rest of it, so we do get a lot of people from overseas, but a lot of people now from the rest of the country. If you're only getting €1 to your pound, you probably think, I'll come to Lincolnshire.
The industry employs more than 250,000 people in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, but it's estimated up to half the workers in some businesses come from other EU countries, which has raised questions about recruitment after Brexit.
Many hospitality businesses rely upon seasonal labour from Europe and from other parts of the world, and clearly they want some clarity as to what the rules will be and what status those people will still be able to work in their businesses going forwards.
We do have a mix of employment. I'd probably say about 30 or 40% of our team, certainly as a casual basis for restaurant and bar, and certainly for housekeeping, do rely on that use of European staff.
I'm a qualified accountant back in Hungary. I came to England 13 years ago looking for new opportunities. I kind of understand British people, why they vote yes to Brexit, but I do understand the other side as well. I just hope it's going to be a easier way for me to stay if they decide they can't send us home. Otherwise, I think the country gonna collapse, because there's so many people from East Europe working here, and we keep the country going.
It's going to be a challenge, I think, and I think my concern is the uncertainty that is there now, and certainly through next year, change the way in which people travel and learn and plan for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And because of that, people, I think, will not do anything the year after next, and therefore there will be a gap, I think, and a blip in that process of travel, of learning and recruitment in the process.
Tourism in our region has previously had to deal with the rise in cheap foreign holidays and, of course, the unpredictability of the great British weather. But how will the uncertainty over post-referendum Britain play out? Will the industry sink or will it swim?
Sarah Irwin there reporting from sunny Scarborough. Rishi Sunak, are tourism businesses right to be worried about the possible shortage of workers post-Brexit?
Well, first, as a Yorkshire MP, I'm enormously proud of the success we've had attracting tourists, not just from around the UK, but also from around the world. And look, I don't think they have to be worried. Obviously, there is some uncertainty today, but the Prime Minister's been very clear that our expectation and hope is that everyone who's already here, who's an EU citizen, will be able to stay. And I think, you know, most of them, by the time we leave, will already have a legal right to stay anyway. And I'm sure that's what will happen. And I think on that score, there should be no trouble. And I think the other thing to note as well is, of course, people voted in a referendum, you know, to have some control of immigration, which is sensible. I don't think people voted for an end to all immigration. Of course, people realise we need some immigration. We just want to be in control of it, and we want to have a system that we will put in place that will determine who's coming here.
But businesses have to plan for the future, don't they? And at the moment, they just don't know what the government's immigration policy is going to be post-Brexit.
Right, and we've just started this process, right? We're not going to be leaving for, you know, 2.5 years from where we are today, give or take. So there's plenty of time for those things to come out. We're about to start our negotiations with our European partners early next year, and I'm sure in time we will start to disclose those plans, and I think people will find that there is nothing to worry about, both for people who are already here and also going forward.
Well, Godfrey Bloom, if the tourism industry relies on 50% of EU workers working in that industry, do you accept they will struggle after Brexit if those workers go home?
Well, first of all, as I might suggest, I was father of Yorkshire Brexit. I've been in the game since 1992. I've never met anybody who suggests that we should send anybody home who is in gainful employment. I don't know anybody who regards that as being fair or just. Yeah. Nobody. And that certainly isn't going to happen. So anybody who is in employment at the moment, gainful employment, will stay. Now, where we do have a problem, which I don't think is being properly addressed, is if we have, broadly speaking, on average 20% youth unemployment in the north of England, which we do, we should be starting, the point we should be making is training these people up, training our own youngsters up to take these jobs, most of which are semi-skilled. So what we need is to look at our education policy, our welfare policy, and our work ethos in our youngsters, so we can fill these things ourselves. So yes, let's keep the people who've come in to help us with our industries, and very good they are, but let's make sure we can start getting our own youngsters into some of these jobs.
And I think actually Godfrey makes a very important point, which I agree with. You know, we've got great talent in this country. We've got young people who should be trained, and I'm delighted that we're investing more in apprenticeships, and specifically in apprenticeships for tourism, where some of the leading tourism employers have created a new standard for apprenticeships, and the government has created a flexible apprenticeship for tourism where people can take longer to finish it, because obviously it's seasonal and they need time to be working full-time in certain peak periods.
But
and
if
those
that's
are exactly
working,
the kinds
why
of
are
things.
so many businesses and Sir Gary Verity, Chief Executive of Welcome to Yorkshire, so worried about this, the possible labour shortage after Brexit?
Well, these things have just started, and they started before Brexit happened, the investment in this new apprenticeship programme, so the fruits of that we'll start to see. And now that people know this is something we need to focus on, there'll be more focus on it, which is, I think, a good thing. But in terms of the numbers, I think the numbers maybe in the report may be a little misleading. The Office for National Statistics, which I had a look before coming on, suggests that around 10% of employment in hospitality and food services and accommodation relates to non-British citizens. So it's a much smaller figure than the number in your report. And of those, that 10%, obviously some will be non-EU immigrants. Obviously they're not affected by any Brexit. So I think the scale of what we're talking about is probably smaller than the particular businesses that we might have been seeing in the report as well.
But what do you say, Godfrey Bloom, to the gentleman we saw in that report there, who was from Hungary? He's a trained accountant, now working as a head housekeeper, who feels he isn't really welcome in Brexit Britain?
Well, I got the impression from that clip he's been here for 13 years, so he must be feeling relatively comfortable, otherwise he'd have gone back to Hungary. No, I mean, an articulate guy, there's loads of them. As you know, I married into a Polish refugee family myself, and they're welcome and they work very hard, and so I don't think there's a problem. He doesn't have a problem. Nobody I know on either side of the parties think he should go.
But the government is looking, we understand, at a visa system for EU workers. Now, how do you differentiate between what is a skilled worker and what is an unskilled worker? This is going to be the pinch point, isn't it? You know, is a chef a skilled worker? You know, how do you say, you're welcome to come here, you're not?
Well, I think it's not about welcome and not welcome. This is not about hostility.
No, but there will be a
people.
criteria based on skills.
Of course there is, and let's just be clear, that's not something that's odd or controversial. That's something that pretty much every other country in the world does. And indeed, that's also what we do today for every country that's not in the European Union. Every country has a system of immigration where they look at the needs of their businesses, where do we need to get people, what kinds of things ought we be training young people to do ourselves, where do we need to get some extra help, and then design a system that's going to attract those people and make sure that we're in control of the numbers so we can manage the impact.
Let's move on, because it's been a busy few weeks for UKIP, from a short-lived leader to an altercation in the European Parliament, and claims the party is in a death spiral made by the man once tipped to take over from Nigel Farage. So what happens next? Supporters have been telling James Vincent.
Independence Party, Diane James. It started with a kiss.
It's been a bit of a month for UKIP, ironically, in the year where they got everything they ever wanted. The 16th of September, Diane James is elected leader and replaces Nigel Farage.
I ask you, support me, work with me, win with me.
Morning. Yeah, that didn't happen. Quicker than you can get rid of an England manager, she was gone 18 days in the job. Her nomination papers showed some Latin, which means an agreement made under duress. The 5th of October, Nigel Farage back in charge to steady the ship.
Turmoil in UKIP.
The next day, the altercation. Yorkshire MEP Mike Hookham and Stephen Woolfe. Mr Woolfe spent 3 days in hospital. Mike Hookham says he didn't throw a punch.
These things happen, you know. We get vocal debates. This went a step further from that.
It was a step too far for Stephen Woolfe. October the 17th, and the man tipped to be the next leader of UKIP was off.
My future in UKIP is very clear. There is none. I hope that UKIP can recover. I just fear at the moment they're in a spiral downwards.
Join in.
So chaos on the top deck of the party, but UKIP has always been an organisation driven by its grassroots. So are campaigners here in Yorkshire and Lincolnshire worried what will happen?
We are the Rocky Balboa of politics. Every time we get knocked down and it looks like we're never going to get back up again, we get back up. Look, it's not seemly, it's not great, but it is good entertainment. And hey, we're a real party of real people. We're not career politicians that have been polished within an inch of our lives to say one thing in front of, you know, the cameras and a different thing behind people's back. We say what we think.
We've got Brexit, what we campaigned for 20-odd years. Now it's time to move on. We've got to prove now that we are a political party. And I think we've proved that, but we've got to carry on and show that we are a credible political party.
One thing we are very much united in is to get us out of Europe, but properly, not the softly way that the government is at the moment, where they might reduce immigration a little bit our payments, but not truly get us out. That is what we are standing for. We are all united behind that, and any leader will have to be passionate about that to succeed.
So we need to go back past the resignations, the altercations and the divisions to the most important date for the party, when we voted to leave the EU.
Give us away from Brexit!
Job done for the UK Independence Party. The key is in the name. The fundamental question, what do they do now?
Thanks, everybody. Cheers, bye-bye.
Yeah, James Vincent with that report. So, Godfrey Bloom, is Stephen Woolfe right when he says that UKIP now is locked in a death spiral?
I wish I had a penny for every time that people had told me that UKIP was on the skids. No, quite right in that clip, which very strongly made the point that the strength in UKIP is in its grassroots. It's the most extraordinary grassroots party. The infantry are out there fighting every day, wearing out shoe leather. It's extraordinary. They aren't done very fairly, I think, by their hierarchy. I think perhaps lions led by donkeys might one perhaps take that particular phrase. But no, it isn't in a death spiral. There's still plenty to do, because there's a view people are saying, well, you know, we've had the referendum. But as Reggie just said, that, you know, we could be 2 years away from coming out. And so UKIP, until we are out, UKIP has a very real job to do.
But how does UKIP rebrand itself after that?
Well, I think that's 2 years. Let's say we agree it's 2 years down the road, and I think then you can worry about policy after that. There's a very strong centre-left wing in UKIP. and there's a very much smaller classical liberal wing, if you will. That's basically how it splits policy-wise. But I would suggest that what UKIP needs to do is focus on the next 2 years of no schism. Get a leader, get the new leader who can bring all shades of opinion together in UKIP. UKIP can then be on watch until Brexit really happens. And then in 2 years' time, they can sit down and they can thrash out where they want to be in the political spectrum, which they haven't done yet. Nobody knows quite where it fits in.
Do you accept that point, Rishi Sunak? Is that there is a void, perhaps, in British politics for a libertarian party that believes in small government? Because Theresa May, whatever you may think of her, seems to believe that government is the solution and not the problem.
No, I think you saw it in the clip. The gentleman, the UKIP gentleman, said, you know, it's not seemly, it's not great, but it's good entertainment. You know, I think that's not what people want from the political parties. They don't want entertainment. We've obviously got a big set of decisions, important decisions for our country. I think people are looking for some strong leadership, some competent leadership, and I agree with the comments in the video. People want to make sure that we deliver on Brexit and make a proper success of it. I think, you know, in Theresa May, you know, you've got a Prime Minister that is absolutely committed to that cause. She's set out her stall. She's providing some very strong leadership from the get-go and focus on the people that we were just talking about. These are ordinary people who are working hard, who sometimes feel the system might not work for them and want to make sure that it does. And she's, you know, firmly focused on that, and I think that's the right thing for them to do.
Well, time will tell, but Godfrey Bloom, you have the party you were once a part of is in a leadership contest now. Who do you support? Do you have a favourite?
Well, I think there's only one person that can actually bring the party together, because everybody else, talented though they may be, come from one of the schisms, if you will. So you have Suzanne Evans, but she's part of this faction. You have other people who are part of a faction. They need to select somebody who can actually, everybody can support and not go off in a huff and resign. And the only person that can do that really is Paul Nuttall, who had a tremendous run as party chairman. A lot of the problems in UKIP, because there's been no serious party chairman for the last 10 years. Utterly hopeless. You cannot run a political party without a decent chairman. Paul Nuttall ran that extremely well. He's a very popular, very well-read and very likeable individual. He's the only man, in my view, that can do it.
Well, I should be glad of your endorsement there, Godfrey Bloom. So now, let's find out more of the week's political news. David Tratch has our roundup in 60 seconds.
Political differences have been put aside in the campaign to stop A&E services being moved from Huddersfield to Halifax. Local MPs Paula Sheriff and Jason McCartney say Health Minister Jeremy Hunt should visit to see for himself why the plans, agreed by health bosses this week, are wrong. Labour's Yvette Cooper has a new powerful job. The MP for Normanton, Pontefract and Castleford is the new chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, replacing Keith Vaz, and Leeds MP Hilary Benn is in charge of the new Brexit Committee. There's a devolution divide between local and national politicians over elected mayors. Lincolnshire County Council has voted against Greater Lincolnshire City Region as they don't want a mayor, something the government insists is part of the deal. And the new Batley and Spen MP is Tracey Brabbin, former actress, now politician. She took 86% of the vote, but only a quarter of people in the constituency went to the polls.
And Tracey Brabbin joins us now. Welcome to the Sunday Politics.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on your by-election victory. Obviously, it all came about due to the tragic events back in the summer. Would you still have had political ambitions? Would you have hoped to have been an MP had the Jo Cox tragedy not happened?
Well, all my life I've been a campaigner and an activist and working for trade union rights within Equity, my union, and the Writers Guild. So I would certainly continue that. But I was, obviously the circumstances are such that when the Labour Party asked me to think about it, I had to think very carefully. But also campaigning with Jo in 2015 and against the closures of libraries in Bristol and Batley, she did say, you know, Tracey, you should think about maybe becoming an MP. So when she was murdered and there was a vacuum created, you know, I couldn't walk away from it. And it's my hometown, you know, I'm a local girl, Howdenclough Estate. You know, the community asked me to do it and, you know, I couldn't walk away.
Does it bother you that the turnout was down to 25%? A lot of the supporters of the other main Westminster parties seem to have stayed at home.
Well, you know, it was a wet Thursday in October. What really matters is it's 86%. And it's a really great mandate. There are a lot of people I met on the doorstep who don't normally vote, who normally do vote Conservative, and said, given the circumstances that you've got the far right standing, and what was a tragedy for us, they're seeing as some sort of opportunity to get their division out there. We're actually going to vote for you, and I was really heartened by that. And you might be right that the numbers, you know, aren't what you'd see in a general election, but then you've got several parties knocking on doors and getting people out. But I'm really proud that the people of Batley and Spen have chosen me to unite the community and move forward.
Rishi, you're a relatively new MP. What can Tracey expect as a new MP at Westminster? What's it like?
Well, I mean, I think it'd probably be a bit special and a bit different for Tracey, because she'll come in, well, not quite on her own, because Robert Courts, who just won the election in Witney, will also be with her. But I think there'll be a lot of focus and attention on Tracey when she comes and swears in on Monday, which will be fantastic. And, you know, like me, she's following in the footsteps of someone who everyone knows. I, you know, came behind William Hague, and obviously, you know, Tracey's following behind Joe Cox. And, you know, you feel, I think, an extra sense of responsibility to do your job that much better, you know, when someone has come before you and set such a high bar and leaves with such an amazing reputation. So, you know, but you've got to be yourself, is what I would say, because, you know, you can't be Joe, I can't be William. You know, be yourself, and I'm sure you'll get off to a cracking start next week.
What advice would you give to somebody starting out in politics, Godfrey Bloom?
Well, I'd give it a pretty much close thing. I'd stick to your conviction. Don't let people rock your conviction. There aren't enough conviction politicians around, in my view. So whatever you believe in, you stick with it and don't be bullied by party whips. You've got a good seat, safe seat. I think you'll do jolly well, and my congratulations as well. But you stay with it. You stay with it.
You've got a very successful grammar school in your constituency,
Yeah.
Heckman-Dwight Grammar, where Joe Cox went to school. I think you went there as well, didn't
did,
you?
yeah.
Will
yeah.
you be campaigning to stop more grammar schools in your constituency?
Well, I would say that obviously no parent, every parent wants the best for their child, and Heckman-Dwight is a fine grammar. But I would say that for some children, that division at a very young age gives a sense of failure that sticks with them for the rest of their life. And both my daughters go to comprehensives, and there is a real cross-section of the community. So you have young people who will go on to apprenticeships and other young people who go to Oxbridge. And I think it gives you a real vision of the world and a view that, you know, you can be anything and achieve anything, because there's nobody really clamouring for more secondary moderns.
Well, we might come back and debate that in detail at a later date, but if you can achieve one thing in Parliament, what will that be?
Slow down the downgrade of Dewsbury Hospital, because it's brought about so much stress, so much anxiety. It also seems that if Huddersfield goes the same way, North Kirklees is going to be without a dedicated A&E, and it's really creating a lot of unhappiness and stress.
And you're part of now the biggest soap opera of all, Westminster politics.
Yes, that's true, yes.
All right. Thank you all for your time today, to Rishi Sunak, to Godfrey Bloom and to Tracey Brabbin. And with that, we shall hand back now to Andrew Neil in London.